One more week. One more week. One more week until Super Bowl 57. The conclusion of the 2022 NFL season is right ahead of us. And if any of you thought that the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles would meet in Super Bowl 57, you were crazy. Well, not on Kansas City's part because face it, everyone said the Chiefs, Bengals, and Bills will be the three teams competing for that Lombardi trophy in the AFC. And on the NFC, we all thought it was going to be the Rams, Buccaneers, or maybe 49ers or Packers. But it just shows you how things could be so different that the NFL does not always follow the script that it says it that most people believe. That we might have a Cinderella year like 1999 was, but anyways, next Sunday night, the Chiefs and Eagles will battle for NFL supremacy. And when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, this is a team that is in their third Super Bowl in the last 4 years, and it all began 10 years ago. In 2012, the Kansas City Chiefs tied for the worst record in the NFL at 2-14. They got the number one overall pick over the Jacksonville Jaguars because of the fact that the Jaguars beat them in tiebreakers, since the Jaguars' 2 wins came in the AFC and Kansas City's only one of their did not win any AFC games that year. They were both wins in the NFC. But go back to 2012 when the Chiefs head coach was Romeo Crennel. Their quarterback was Brady Quinn, Matt Castle, et cetera, et cetera. And even though that team had 5 Pro Bowl players in Jamal Charles, their all-time leading rusher, Justin Houston, and they had Eric Berry, the Chiefs were downright awful that season. They had such a bad offense because of the fact that they didn't have a franchise quarterback. They didn't have big-name receivers. The only thing they had on offense was they had a horrible offensive line, and they had one of the best backs in the NFL at that time in Jamal Charles. I mean, that 2012 Chiefs was so bad that you had the fan base calling for heads in that organization, having Save Our Chiefs. Their first victory that year came in week 3, I believe, against the New Orleans Saints when they were trailing 24-6 in the fourth quarter. They made a great comeback and won it in overtime 27-24. That was the first their field goal victory was the first time the Chiefs led that season. Then the Chiefs went on a giant losing streak. And a 9-6 home loss to Baltimore, the crowd infamously cheered an injured Matt Castle, in which tackle Eric Winston said that was just so disgusting for them to do. The losing just kept coming. In a Week 12 matchup against the Denver Broncos, they kicked a field goal to lead 3-0. That was the first time the Chiefs led since their victory in New Orleans, and that was the first time they led in regulation, since the only time they led was in that overtime against New Orleans. The Save Our Chiefs was coming from the fans, but the tragedy that happened that season was worse than anything on the football field. It was when fellow outside linebacker Javon Belcher murdered his girlfriend Cassandra Perkins and then went to the team's facility, thanked head coach Romeo Crennel and general manager Scott Pioli for giving him the opportunity, and then shot and killed himself. The next day, and even though there was speculation that the Chiefs should just not play the game and cancel it, they said, we're going to play the game. And they did. the Chiefs would go on and defeat the Carolina Panthers 27-21 the day after Javon Belcher killed himself, and the Chiefs would win that game. And the Chiefs ended the year 2-14, which the termination of Scott Pioli and head coach Romeo Crennel happened. And then they hired Andy Reid, who coincidentally enough coached the team the Eagles are going to be going up against in the Super Bowl. Andy Reid helped change the culture back to a winning culture. Andy Reid just focused on coaching, not by being a general manager, just focused on coaching. And one big move the Chiefs made after the hiring of Andy Reid was trading to get Alex Smith from the San Francisco 49ers, who had just lost his job to Colin Kaepernick. They also used their first overall pick that year to select tackle Eric Fisher, which, hindsight, wasn't a bad pick, but it wasn't the greatest pick in the world either, in what turned out to be one of the worst draft classes in NFL history, 2013. And then they used the third round pick on Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce only played in one game, and that was on special teams in a victory against the Dallas Cowboys in 2013. But then he suffered an injury that sidelined him for the rest of his rookie year. The Chiefs would go, after being tied for the worst record in the NFL the previous year, they would win their first 9 games, being the last remaining undefeated team left. And this is the 2013 Chiefs. After coming off a 2-14 year, they won their first 9 games. But then they got back to reality. They won those 9 games because, let's put it this way, their defense was one of the best, was the number 1 in scoring at that time. And yes, this was the same season the Seahawks had their historical year. And their offense had the fantasy player of the year that year in Jamal Charles. But then, and they also were questioned because they played a lot of easy competition. And when they started playing tougher competition like the Denver Broncos, the Chargers, the Colts, they fell flat and fell to 11-5. Then they had that playoff game against the Colts where they melted down. They had a 39-10 lead, but you all know the Colts made that historic comeback and beat them 45-44. Then 2014, they ended the season 9-7 in 2014. 2015, however, they started the year off 1-5. Then they went on to a 10-game winning streak, and they would go off and beat the Texans in the wild card round before they lost to the Patriots in the divisional round. In 2016, Peyton Manning was no longer in Denver, and they didn't have to worry about Peyton Manning no more, and the Chiefs went out and won the division at 12-4, but lost to Pittsburgh. And then came 2017, when the Chiefs traded for the 10th overall spot and selected Texas Tech quarterback Patrick Mahomes. After seeing out most of his rookie year before getting the start in a Week 17 matchup against the Denver Broncos, the Chiefs would go on, win the West again before they would blow an 11-point lead to the Tennessee Titans. Then 2018 came, the year the Chiefs put it all together. They traded Alex Smith to Washington, and Patrick Mahomes was the starter, and he did phenomenal. He threw 50 touchdown passes and would win league MVP, and then would go off and lose to the Patriots in the controversial AFC Championship. 2019 came, they went on, won Super Bowl 54 against the 49ers. 2020 came, they would lose to the Buccaneers in Super Bowl 55, and then they lost in the AFC Championship to Cincinnati last year. And now they're headed back to the Super Bowl. When you look at the Chiefs, it's not all about Patrick Mahomes. When you have the best tight end in the NFL in Travis Kelce, who's a future Hall of Famer, you have you let go, you traded away your best receiver, Tyreek Hill, in the offseason due to a contract dispute to the Miami Dolphins. You signed Juju Smith-Schuster. He does such a great job. And then you have this rookie running back named Isaiah Pacheco. And in this Super Bowl, they will have an offensive line, something they didn't have in last year's, in Super Bowl 55 against Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay exploited it by bringing a lot of pressure. And then on the defense side of the ball, they got probably the next best defensive tackle in the league in Chris Jones, who has just been stepping up, making plays in the in the playoffs. And they got a lot of talent too. They could bring pressure as well on the defense side of the ball. So if the Chiefs could sit there and do all of that, make Patrick Mahomes play his game, then that's a good reason why they have a good chance to win. And they throw it to Travis Kelce, and the defense, they allow pressure on Jalen Hurts, and Chris Jones comes up big like he did last week in Cincinnati. That is why the Chiefs have a good chance to get their third Super Bowl in the history of the franchise and their second in the last 4 years. Hopefully, I'm wrong. I don't want to see the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, but if they could play like that, this team has a chance to make it 2 out of 4.